Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Got a brand new, got a brand new.
All right, hello, welcome all. Thanks so much for being here. It is 10 o'clock. We'll get started in about a minute or two. So thank you so much for coming to the data-driven career panel. Right, welcome all. All right, Robin, I know your class is coming in. Thank you all for coming. See lots of people on here, so thank you. All right, it is 10:02, so I do want to get started. Robin, can you give me a thumbs up if we're feeling good to get started? Wonderful. Okay, so first off, I just want to welcome everyone for being here today. Thank you so much for coming to our second annual Data-Driven Career Panel, where you get to learn from industry professionals about how you can apply and utilize data in various different industries. I'm going to go ahead again. I didn't even introduce myself. So hi, I'm Kaylee Schroeder. I am I'm a career advisors here at CSU Chico. And so I will be moderating today's event. I do want to introduce Dr. Donatello, who will be talking about the grant and then going over a pre-survey that we're going to ask you to take.
Awesome. We're gonna have to go from this.
That's perfect, Robin. We can hear you.
Switch, can you switch to this view? And yeah, sorry, I'm like connecting in from the classroom and from my laptop. But thanks for everyone for showing up today. The project DFAN aims to highlight Hispanic and Latino excellence in the combination, the intersection of the data analytic and food, ag, natural resources, and human science fields. There's a lot of great work being done in both of those domains. And, we're trying to specifically showcase, how data can be used to answer really important questions in those fields. So, because this is part of a grant, to assess kind of the impact of this event and to make sure this is a good use of your time, we would appreciate if you would take a very quick 5-minute survey. The QR code is right above Kaylee's head, and for my students, I'll also put this link in our Discord channel in a moment as well. So yeah, appreciate your time, appreciate our panelists for being here. This is a USDA grant, so I'm very appreciative for the folks that are to come talk about those that have specific USDA experience as well.
All right, thank you, Robin. Well, we are going to get started and we're going to introduce all of our panelists. So we're going to start off with the first question, which is an introduction. So panelists, please let all of the students and staff know who you are, what company you work with, what your role is, and a basic overview of your job.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and begin. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for having me be part of this discussion. It's an honor. I once was in your shoes, so I love talking about what I do and how I got started with my career as a public servant. But my name is Valerie Negron. I'm a public affairs specialist at USDA's Economic Research Service. In my role, I'm responsible for communicating the agency's research findings and data to various stakeholders, including policymakers, journalists, and the general public. So this involves tasks such as managing and developing content for ERS's social media accounts, one of my favorite things of my job to do, as well as working with media outlets and reporters on inquiries or stories that feature our data and research, as well as planning and coordinating webinars to disseminate key findings and engaging with stakeholders. Additionally, I collaborate with our subject matter experts, which include research economists, social scientists, statisticians, to ensure that our data is effectively shared with and understood by diverse audiences. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. And throughout today's discussion, I'll get to share a little bit more about how I got started and a little bit more about the data that we have at ERS. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Guzman, and I'm an epidemiologist for the state of California. I have a Bachelor in Science in Health Science from Chico State, and then a Master of Public Health from the University of New Hampshire. So I'm sure epidemiologist is a term that everyone's probably more familiar with post-pandemic, but that is my role. It's to track and study disease using data. The pandemic epidemiologists are infectious disease epidemiologists, and I'm more of a chronic disease epidemiologist. So I track adverse childhood experiences and how those experiences can impact your health and your social behavior, your health behaviors later in life, and then how positive childhood experiences can maybe counteract the adverse ones. And so I analyze that data and create reports, a lot similar to like an academic journal article, but for government. So then it's used to inform policymakers, inform prevention programming, and inform the public.
What's up, everybody? I'm Christian Duenas. I did my bachelor's at UCR in statistics, and then I started a PhD in statistics at UCR as well. Dropped out, and now I am a full-time data scientist at a little company called Red Bull. What I do there kind of depends. It's a little bit of an interesting position. I kind of dabble in a bunch of different things, but in general, I just kind of use my nerd skills to support the business. So sometimes that means working with sales data. That might also mean working with marketing data. A lot of the times I create my own data and I need to go and web scrape what might be relevant to whatever Red Bull decides they want to be involved in.
Hey all, my name's Angie, full government name Angelica Rodriguez Arriaga. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, I will link it later. I have a bachelor's in geology from Chico State and a master's in geology from UNR. And my role, I think similar to Christian, really varies. I'm a groundwater consultant, staff hydrogeologist at a engineering consulting firm. And so what I do day to day really varies depending on what our goal is. I'm involved in a lot of regulation of groundwater type work. Mixed bag, I would say, but we'll get into that later.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Holmberg. My background is undergraduate in Arab studies, master's degree in Arab studies, undergraduate in chemical engineering, which is why, of course, I'm here to talk about AI and wildlife conservation and data management today. I'm completely unqualified for my job, and yet I've been working at this about 20 years. My job is to lead a team of software and machine learning professionals creating data management frameworks and AI models to help wildlife researchers, about 1,800 plus, for whales and dolphins, leafy and weedy sea dragons, snow leopards, leopards, giraffe, and others, be able to photograph individuals in their populations and be able to then individually identify them. If you think about the CIA, they only track one species. We track over 50, taking photographs and identifying down to the individual animal level, who are we seeing? And if we can take those identities, those dates and locations, we can feed those into population models and help local conservation efforts be armed with the data and the AI tools they need to actually make real change in wildlife conservation. And that's my job.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for that brief introduction. I'm excited to hear a little bit more how you guys all said that you're going to dive deeper. So our next question, which is where I think you're going to dive a little bit deeper, is how is data used in your role or company, and what skills do you use on a daily basis? And these skills can be hard skills or soft skills.
Wonderful. As I mentioned, I'm part of USDA's Economic Research Service. I wanted to preface before answering the question really quickly that USDA has a lot of agencies. So I just happen to be one of USDA's statistical agency. So as a federal statistical agency, data is the backbone of our work, of what we do here at ERS. We develop and disseminate data related to agriculture, food, the environment, and rural America. In essence, these studies and data are the fuel behind policy decisions, economic research, and insights into agricultural trends. To excel in this environment, our research economists, our social scientists may agree with me and say that you'll need solid analytical skills. So you've got to be able to analyze data, spot patterns, and draw meaningful conclusions. But when I put my public affairs communications hat on, I will have to tell you guys that it's not just about crunching numbers. Communication is also key. So you definitely need to be able to take that complex data and make it understandable to a wide range of audience, from farmers to folks in academia, fellow ag economists, to policymakers, to the general public. So in essence, it's both strong analytical skills and effective communication are essential for success in this field or the Economic Research Service.
So I analyze surveillance data. So that means that I'm analyzing data from surveys that people have answered. They're usually conducted by state and government entities over the phone or online, and they ask hundreds sometimes of health-related questions. So you may have answered one of these surveys when you were in high school, or have been reached out to answer some of these surveys. They're super valuable for gauging the health of the public, basically. And I completely agree with Valerie. What I'm doing is tracking trends and drawing meaningful conclusions. So what I do is I analyze roughly 25 questions specifically, and then I compare those questions to indicators that I selected for things like health, like heart disease, cancer, health behaviors, smoking, drinking, intimate partner violence, mental health outcomes like depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts and attempts. And then the skills that I use on a daily basis is statistical programming. So using, I use SAS, but we are transitioning to R and Python, and then using knowledge of what goes into creating and administering a survey, knowledge of how to focus your data, use it to tell a story, to ideally educate the public, educate policymakers, and then just knowledge of indicators to track, to measure, how to measure, and you do that based off of understanding your population, understanding your state, understanding the community, the neighborhood.
Yeah, so Red Bull historically has not been a company that's had to rely on data. They have thrown people out of planes, and that is how they sell cans. So my job is to kind of like bring that more empirical evidence side of things. So like a lot of the business decisions that are being made, what that looks like can depend entirely on like who it is that I'm working with. But in general, I'd say the role is to kind of just like support decisions that are being made, or maybe offer an alternative instead based on some research or evidence that I would have like crunching numbers. And then as far as like skills that I use on a daily basis, of course, there's like the technical chops, Python, R, Tableau. Uh, if it's something you've seen on a job description, I probably use it. But also, as everyone else has touched on, some of those like softer skills. When you're in school, no one really questions the use of data or statistics. It all just makes sense, because I would hope, at least if you're like in a statistics course, everyone believes in data. But in a company, that's not always necessarily the case. So you really have to like almost as a salesperson, sell your idea of like, this is why you should listen to me. And that takes like a lot of finesse and communication that I am working on.
Yeah, I guess maybe to preface my answer, I'll say that at least in consulting where I work, roles are kind of stratified at maybe the staff, manager, and senior level. So maybe you can think of it as those 3 levels. And so me being at the staff level, I have like a certain set of skills that I use. And so that would include things like data scraping, simply like getting the data, downloading bulk data via APIs, sometimes data wrangling and cleaning. So making sure that all your data looks the same, is in the same format, and lots of spatial analysis, particularly using GIS, QGIS, ArcPro software. And for that, I would say you do need to know, like at least in my capacity, I do need to know a little bit of coding. Like I am coding competent, I would say, but not like an expert or anything. And that is, I think, something that's unique to consulting, is where you kind of need to be a little bit of a jack of all trades. And then kind of getting into the soft skills part, I would say, as you're kind of moving up into more of a mid-level career, being a manager, there's a lot to be said about being able to facilitate a meeting, being organized in that way, because there's just a lot of coordination between your internal team, your client, maybe there's a sub. So coordination is also really important.
So in my role, I'm going to give 3 softer skills that I have to use: thoughtfulness, skepticism, and a joyful acceptance of discomfort. 2 of those are a little bit weird, but let me explain why. So the data that we receive from these 1,800 wildlife biologists across the globe, marine and terrestrial, it's photographs, dates, and locations, and we're trying to help them use AI to both find animals in their imagery and then individually identify them. Which leopard is this? Which hyena is this? All those data points are flowing into our common database framework, and we're using that data to train these AI models. Especially in the past 6 months, when large language models have taught us that some of the limitations we have of AI have simply been that we've been starving the models, that more and more data can often, if it's clean, produce better models, means that more and more we're combining data from multiple human experts, an expert whale biologist who's curated their data, an expert African leopard biologist. People who don't even talk are contributing data into a common model. One of the experiments we're doing with data right now is creating a multi-species individual ID model, whose job is to figure out who is this by learning from examples from many different species, even if they look wildly different. What we're creating, in essence, is a foundation model, a very big model. And this is where the thoughtfulness comes in. What data do I put in there? Am I asking the right question? Because often the question is, which individual animal is this from 100,000 photographs? That's a needle in a haystack question, and how we formulate the use of that data is very different than some other domains. There's skepticism in that when we're training AI, we are losing some of our control in the data management. The AI is making decisions. It's a trained model, and oftentimes these are inscrutable black boxes making decisions. Worse, the AI is inputting data, outputting inference, and current deep learning techniques are terrible at explaining why they made a decision. They may be wildly accurate, but the actual explanation of why it thinks this is still quite challenging. So that's where some of the skepticism comes in. Have I actually trained the model to do what I think it does? And then the discomfort is, we're creating these AI systems based on data that has come to us that are essentially super experts. They have learned from many, many other human experts, and they are trained on such a large volume of data that I will never have the amount of money to go through and clean up the data because we know there's biases and errors in it. So how do I begin dealing with expert systems that eclipse the capability of any single individual, even my own expertise, and begin finding data problems in there and checking their results? And that's actually very uncomfortable. And yet it's joyful and interesting because we're really working with new capabilities using data from many different people as the input.
Awesome, that's great. It's fascinating to hear how you guys each use data and are applying it to the different companies that y'all work in. All right, so the next one, right, you have a huge audience of college students. So what is your advice that you have for college students as they explore future careers and even future careers in data? Oh, Valerie, we can't hear you all of a sudden. You did come off mute.
Let's see, can you hear me now? Yeah. Perfect. Sorry about that. My biggest advice would be to seek out internships. Internships are great opportunities for learning, to develop skills, and many times internships allow you to explore different fields and industries. I'll use myself as an example. My journey with USDA began during my undergraduate degree. While I was studying political science at the University of Puerto Rico, Maya West. And this university was synonymous for its agricultural studies. So it was pretty hard to study political science and stay away from the topic of agriculture. So I quickly found myself volunteering for a university's annual ag fair, and essentially found my passion for agriculture and public engagement. So then I found myself asking, what can I do to combine my passion for political science or social sciences, agriculture, and public engagement? And at the time, I had a mentor who suggested I try an internship, maybe in the public sector. So far I've given you a few advice: internships, volunteer, and have mentors, good mentors. And through that internship, I did what's called the Pathways internship. So if you guys have a notepad, highly recommend write this internship down. Pathways internship. In my case, it was with USDA. And through this internship opportunity, I ended up working with USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service, but with their outreach and communication team. And then it all made sense. Oh, I can combine agriculture, social science, and public engagement, and it's called a public affairs specialist. So in essence, my biggest tip, again, in summary, is to do internships. You know, you may be studying statistics, data science, whatever it may be. But I think it's through internships where you get the opportunity to put theory, in essence, like play it out. So if I can go back in time, I would have explored an internship maybe in the public sector, in the private sector, in a different industry. So take advantage of that. Before I conclude and pass it over to my colleagues, I want to quickly just mention a few things about the Pathways internship. One, it's paid. Two, it doesn't have to be necessarily with USDA, although USDA is an awesome place to work at. But it could be in any other federal agency. And one of the biggest perks, besides that it's paid, is that when you conclude your internship, if you did a good job, you have good mentors and people backing you up, you're able to then convert to a full-time employee. So essentially, you're working your way into your future career. So highly recommend that. Again, that's the Pathways internship. Just give it a quick Google search and you'll learn more about it.
So I think my advice is a little contradictory. It's to have a plan, a postgraduate plan, probably a plan B, a plan C, but also be flexible. I think it is unlikely to go exactly how you think it's going to go. So mapping out a couple different routes for your career that you would be comfortable with, and then being able to pivot and make changes as things start to come up. I think, even people that I know who got their like ideal or dream job after college, they were ready to move on after about a year or so. So you'll need just a couple of different plans for your route. And then I do agree with Valerie having an internship. I had one required by my bachelor's degree, and I don't think I would have gotten my first job without it. So really valuable.
Yeah, so something I did that I think has translated well into my career is working on personal projects. Usually when you're in school, and at least in my statistics program, like a lot of the times you were just kind of like handed a data set and then you did whatever you needed to do to it, whatever they told you to do to it, and you turned it in, got some feedback. But in the real world, a lot of that like process doesn't really exist, at least for me. I feel like what helped me a lot is I would go and pull my own data for some field that usually didn't like lend itself inherently to like a data driven project. So like, for example, I really like gaming. So a little project I did, I was like, where can I find all the like gaming data for like tournaments and pull that information together? How can I do it in a way that makes sense? And then who can I like sell it to essentially? To find like some sort of like value out of it, because like I had mentioned earlier, in some fields there's not always like an inherent sense of like value to like working with data, so sometimes you need to like be able to create that for yourself. And I think working on personal projects is something that really helped me do that and kind of understand how to like take data and show somebody like this is why you should use it.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear how similar our jobs are in this respect. So I also wrote down projects for many reasons, like working on personal projects. I think that's really important because not only can you learn a new skill and you're having fun in that way, but you're also building your portfolio, and you can then like share these projects that are fun on the internet. For example, like you could share it on GitHub or make a website. So then that way, when you are talking to a potential employer, you can show them this product that you've built and they can see what you've done. So that's really cool. And then also I would say that as a college student, you're in such a unique time where everybody really wants to talk to you, and you just have so much leverage, I think, in terms of reaching out on LinkedIn and saying like, hey, I'm a college student. I'm really interested in your job. Can you tell me about your journey? And people will like really want to talk to you because a lot of people have been in your shoes before. So I would say use the college card while you have it, just because it gets like a little difficult as you get into your career. I don't know, people are just really busy. Like I've been trying to set up a coffee date with some of my coworkers since like December, and it's March. So that's another thing. And then my last piece of advice is what is the button up in khakis equivalent to women at annual conferences? You can't go wrong with knitwear and wide leg pants. It's my opinion.
So I'm a guy with a background in chemical engineering and Arab studies talking about AI and wildlife. Take anything I say about career advice with a giant grain of salt here, but I really want to riff off of what Angie and Christian said. They both hit on a really important signal that was important in my life as well in career, which is one, look at my background. Don't feel locked in by your economics degree. That doesn't mean you can't go into wildlife research. Two, more specifically talking about what Christian and Angie were talking about, look for that signal of what do you like and find a way to get paid for it. That's really important. That is the sweet spot. Whether it's grant writing or career, I always say, figure out what you're going to do anyways, and then try to figure out how somebody will pay you for that. And then the third thing is don't assume in any problem or anything you're interested in, that somewhere out there, there's a panel of PhD level experts doing it better, and therefore you shouldn't do it. My experience and the experience of others I know in the conservation technology industry is exactly the opposite. There are not people out there solving the wildlife extinction crisis, or there are some, but there are not enough. By far, there are not enough. Pick your favorite species, pick your favorite local health issue, pick something that's important to you, and don't self-intimidate to think that experts are already handling this or that you're not welcome. My experience is just the opposite. I've approached many professors about being involved in their projects and been welcomed because I can help them manage their data problems. I can help them get through the data, find signals, and along the way, there's actually an opportunity for you to make discoveries that only you have made. That's your, note in history, or that personal sense of pride and accomplishment that you get from knowing I discovered that. I feel good about having made that contribution, or I'm the first person to have that piece of knowledge and now I'm going to share it. There's a lot to individual discovery, and then not self-intimidating to think that you're not good enough to help as part of this. I'm glad I didn't self-intimidate and that I walked into some of these situations. And I'm also very thankful that there were others who accepted me into them, even though, quite honestly, I wasn't qualified in many situations, but they let me have a chance. So I try to reflect that in how I interact with others as well.
Awesome. Thank you all. I think every one of you touched on such a valuable point as, right, they're navigating, sort of entering into that workforce professional life of this exploratory process. So I will highly recommend internships. There's been lots of surveys. I'm just going to give a little plug about internships, but there's been lots of surveys out there, and industry professionals have said they're more likely to hire someone entering into the workforce if they see that there's an internship on that resume. And so just the value of that. I just did a panel last week as well, and one of the panelists was like, I did an internship and I hated everything about it, but it taught me what I liked and what I didn't like. And so just, again, personal projects, internships, research, figuring out what you like, what you don't like, to then keep moving forward and getting that hands-on experience in the workforce. So thank you all for that advice. All right, so again, this is a little bit more piece of advice, but any particular courses that you took that benefited you in your career, or any courses that you wish you would have taken that you think would have helped you in your career?
So I'm going to put on my economist hat. I'm not an economist, but I work with economists. So I think they would appreciate if I say that courses in statistics, econometrics, data analysis are particularly beneficial for aspiring data analysts at ERS. Additionally, courseworks in economics, specifically agricultural economics. So again, I think I'm echoing some of the things that my colleagues on the call have said, is like, feel free to branch out and explore other avenues. And so coursework, I said, in economics, ag econ, public policy, if you're interested in a career in the public service, is a great course or knowledge to have. And all of these can provide valuable context for understanding the data we work with. And now I'll put my communications hat on, and again mention that courses in communication, writing, public speaking, believe it or not, can further enhance your ability to effectively communicate your research findings to diverse audiences. So I think being well-rounded in all these different areas will definitely make you a successful future ERS employee, or I think in general, someone who works with data in general.
Yeah, so for me, definitely epidemiology as an epidemiologist, and then biostatistics, for sure. Also, research and evaluation. I actually had to take it twice because having a little bit of fun, but I think it served me. I'm very good at research and evaluation now, so not the worst thing. And then definitely the programming software, the earlier the better. I didn't take a class until grad school and I felt behind. So probably something like Python or R or, whatever comes next.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a particular course. Transparently, if you were to ask me what I learned in undergrad, I probably wouldn't be able to like remember much of it. But what I will say is I think the like pacing of like university definitely helped me in my job, because essentially like my job usually is like a lot of projects, which involves working on something for 10 weeks and then like having to like pick up new skills really quickly and then moving on to something else. And that kind of reminds me of like what being a college student felt like, of like, oh, I'm just gonna dedicate myself to studying this for however long, a quarter semester, and then you move on, and you sometimes you'll like build on that, other times maybe you won't use it for a while, but it'll always be like in the back of your head, and you have like the confidence that you'll be able to like pick things up and forget things when you don't think they're relevant, or relearn them, different things like that. Just keep like the pacing of being a continuous learner up.
I guess for my job, I do a lot of spatial analysis, and while I did use software like ArcPro and QGIS in college, I never had like a formal class on that, and so I actually went back while at my job to take a certificate class that was really good. I recommend it. It's through Coursera, the UC Davis extension. It's by Nick Santos. I really recommend it. And then alternatively, kind of contrary to this, I would say think about when you don't need a class. Like for example, if it's something that you're just going to use every once in a while, could you just do a fun project and learn about it? Or could you another way that you could pick up the skill is doing like some sort of 30-day challenge. Like sometimes I'll do in November, like a 30-day mapping challenge every year. And so that not only are you building skills, but you are probably also sharing that on Slack or Reddit and building a community. So also consider when you could just do a project to learn some skills.
I'm going to echo Valerie almost exactly. I recently had a conversation with my daughter as she was picking out her high school syllabus. And I said, be who you want, take the classes you want, except statistics. You're taking statistics. And so you need statistics to work with data. It's not especially a strong area of mine, and I regret that. I regret not taking more classes in it. I would not have enjoyed them. I would have immensely benefited from them. And then also to echo what Valerie was saying, on the exact opposite side of the brain, either take public speaking or creative writing. Why? Those will push you outside your comfort zone. Those will have people critiquing your work in a way that makes you very, very uncomfortable. And yet sometimes when you're working with data, you find inconvenient truths. You may find serious emergencies and problems. And the ability to not only convey those in a socially acceptable way, right? In a way that people will want to hear you, but also in a way where you might face opposition because they are inconvenient truths and you've discovered them in the data. I think that's critically important. So those two opposite side of the brain, creative writing or public speaking, and statistics, as Valerie talked about.
Great, thank you all for that advice. So students, hopefully you had a pen or pencil or something taking notes of some of these important classes that will benefit you as you enter into the workforce. Okay, so it's about 10:40, so I'm just gonna pause for a post survey. So Essia just put this in the chat. So we are gonna open up for Q&A right now while everyone is taking a post survey. So all guests, thank you. Again, thank our panelists, but thank you everyone for being here. But this is gonna be a time for you to do Q&A. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat and our panelists will be happy to answer. If you do not have a question, make sure you are filling out the post survey, which is also located in the chat. Any questions? Not seen question. I have a question that I wanted to ask all of you. I know I'm probably throwing you for a loop because this is not a question that I asked. Oh, I'm actually going to pause on my question because we did get one from a student. So Aurelie did say, in your experience, how easy or difficult is it to transfer data skills across different fields? We'll go same order.
Again, my background was in political science. Then I did my master's in public administration and public policy, and I ended up in an agricultural statistic agency. Data is data. And again, some of the skills we mentioned, courses that we recommended, I think all transfer pretty well. So in essence, I'll keep it short, is that it is, in my opinion, pretty easy to transfer those data skills across different fields. So great field to be in. I wonder what my colleagues have to say.
No, I really like the data is data. For me, like I've been very much like on a track, so haven't had to do much transferring, but I've seen people do it, and I would agree that data is data.
Yeah, I'll echo that data is data as someone who like works with all different kinds of data. I'd say like the hard part usually isn't like Python will be Python no matter what you're working on. The harder part is understanding like the context of like the data that you're using and how to like actually make it useful. So like some forms of analysis might make sense here, but not necessarily make sense here. And that's just going to come with like some domain knowledge. You're going to have to be able to find the right people and ask the right questions and do some research. ChatGPT has been very helpful for these days. So I'd say that's the tougher part. But if you can understand statistics, don't underestimate your ability to learn all sorts of other things.
Yeah, totally agree with everybody. I don't know if I have much to add, but yeah, I think that'd be easy to transfer your skills across different fields.
Data is data, super easy to transfer it. The one advice I'd give is save your scripts, because oftentimes you find ways in one project to handle particularly thorny data problem. And then, 2 months later, you find exactly the same problem, entirely different data, entirely different domain, same problem. Save those scripts so that you have this, as you work more and more with data, you have the ability to fall back on your wisdom and work you've already done and accelerate what you're doing now.
Awesome, thank you. So again, if anyone has any questions in the chat, please put it and make sure you're filling out the post survey. I'm going to ask my question. What would you say is your biggest professional accomplishment that you've had in your field regarding data or articulating the data?
I think, and I like to use this as a joke that I tweet for a living. I do much more than that, but believe it or not, guys, it is a challenge to take this complicated, dense information, topics such as the farm economy, and condense it to 250 characters, right? So that's just part of one of the hats I put on in my role is social media. But beyond that is, like I mentioned earlier in my introduction, is I get to share all this valuable work that essentially gets used for public policy. I need to make sure that that's understandable. So one of my biggest accomplishment is being that bridge between this complex research, data, products, information, and finding a way of highlighting that and sharing that with the public and our various stakeholders. So that for me is very fulfilling.
Yeah, similarly, I am I'm analyzing all of this population data and putting it and condensing it, pulling things out that I think are important, and condensing it into a report for our stakeholders. So for policymakers, for the public, for prevention programming. So my first major report actually comes out on Tuesday. The next one's going to come out in another 6 weeks. It's a long time coming, and I'm very excited about it. I'm also presenting on these reports at a conference in June, an epidemiology conference. So biggest success is still to come.
Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, of course, Christian. What would you say is like your biggest accomplishment or like most proud project that you worked on in regards to data?
Gotcha. I think my favorite one was Red Bull was interested in music festivals. So I developed a scraper that would find all the music festivals in the world, and then it would pull the artist lineups and like find all their demographics. So essentially, you had like this map of all the festivals in the country, and then like a demographic makeup of like who do I think is actually gonna show up to that festival. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is so cool. And I'm going to follow up concerts with taxes and fee studies. So I do a lot of like tax and fee study work. And essentially, we use a lot of different kinds of data to determine some sort of tax on your parcel in a county. And so what I really like about that is that we were able to do that in a way that was fair and equitable for landowners while still providing some sort of income for groundwater sustainability to keep happening in the county. And at the same time, I really resonated with what Valerie had said about transparency and just kind of like we were able to show that, like showcase that whole process on the county's website, and they were able to see exactly like what steps we went through, so that they can see like why is this extra amount on my taxes, which is never fun. But so far, it seems like everybody was happy with that process.
I feel pretty good about a discovery I made with whale sharks. Whale sharks, biggest fish in the ocean, massive sharks, tiny teeth, no danger to you at all. There's a place in northwestern Australia called Ningaloo Reef, and you can pay a boat to take you out, drop you in front of a shark, have this massive shark swim by. Time immemorial backward, there was a research group that came out and said, we need to be worried about these whale sharks. At Ningaloo Reef, they're down 40%. So that's really interesting because I work with the dive industry there, and they're not having trouble finding sharks. So how can we be missing, 40% of the sharks, and yet nobody's having trouble finding them? So I decided if I'm working in this field of helping wildlife biologists manage their data and get through this computer vision to identify their whale sharks, maybe I should do the statistical population modeling too, so I understand them. I read the statistical modeling book. I threw it on the floor and walked away for 3 months. I did that again, walked away for probably 2 or 3 months because I didn't understand it and felt stupid. That happened a third time. And then the fourth time, I had my light bulb moment. I was like, oh, I understand this finally. So I took all this data that I wanted wildlife biologists to be used to do a population model of whale sharks. And I did it myself and came up with a population model and ended up publishing that. And what we discovered is actually the other group was wrong about the 40%, but the signal they were on was that the whale sharks were getting smaller. So their assumption was, if we're having smaller and smaller whale sharks, in fact, the bigger whale sharks must be getting killed elsewhere. And so this population is in decline. What we found is there were 2 populations of whale sharks. There were these tiny juvenile whale sharks that were showing up in larger numbers, but then vanishing because they were migrating on to live their lives elsewhere. They're just showing up for a snack and then leaving. And there was this site faithful group that came back every year of larger whale sharks, and their population was perfectly stable. And so I was able to both publish that in the scientific literature and then go back to resource managers in the dive industry and say, actually, no, you really have a really interesting complex dynamic going on, but there's not actually a collapse here. There's no reason to worry. And those results have held up over time. I feel pretty good about that.
Awesome. Thank y'all. That's super interesting, I think, for each one in your different niche area. So I do recognize it's 10:49. I know some people are leaving because of class, but we do have a super, I think, very valuable question in the chat. Also, panelists, I just want to say, if this is your time, if you want to let our students know, feel free to put anything in the chat for either contact information or valuable. So I think Valerie put information about a data training webinar. So students, please make sure you're checking the chat as well. They're super helpful information. And some of the panelists will be providing contact information if you would like to further connect. But I want to make sure we have time before 11 o'clock for this last question from Nathan. He says, do you have any advice on how to navigate the current job market? I'm majoring in management information system and business analytics. I'm interested in becoming a data analyst or data engineer, but it seems like there's very few jobs for new grads unless you've pursued a master's degree or in a PhD program. So I guess what is your advice of navigating this job market, entering with a bachelor's? And maybe you could talk about your experience or however you would like to answer that, but I think this is super valuable.
I may sound like a broken record when I answer mine, but internships really set your resume apart, whether you are just in undergrad, but the fact that you're already getting your feet wet and working with a team says a lot. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. It's usajobs.gov. If you're interested in a career with the public service, you will need to find your job through this platform, usajobs.gov. In fact, the internship opportunity I talked to you guys about, the Pathways paid internship, you apply for that internship through USA Jobs. So one of my advice is to know where to apply. Start with internships. I promise it will be very valuable. If it not just for developing your skills, for mentoring, networking. And I think that even though okay, I'll stop there because I know my colleagues have a lot of great advice, but internships, and if you want to join the public service, USA Jobs.
Yeah, I'm gonna say internships too, but I also am just gonna empathize. Like I felt that way coming out of school too, and I did go the master's degree route in order to get the job that I have. And I don't know that I would have it without it. So I think it's I get it. I get what you're realizing as you're looking, and it's hard to see.
Yeah. So when I started looking for I burnt out of my PhD and I was like, I need to start looking for an exit plan. This is like a little bit before like the economy looks like what it is now. I just kind of like applied everywhere and got lucky and got the internship at Red Bull. Fast forward to where like when I actually left the PhD, I had already done like a lot of, they call it networking, but just kind of like made friends with the team, so that when, even though the economy was terrible, when it was time for me to like actually apply it to a full-time job, I pretty much already had something lined up and I was able to avoid a lot of like what is happening. So I would say my advice is take on any opportunity you can, and just kind of like meet people, make connections. Cause I think especially like now being on the other end of like what it looks like when you're hiring somebody, that stuff goes a long way.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest networking, attending like professional conferences and exchanging contact info with people. And I would say that just make it known that you're looking for a job. Like, I don't know, maybe post on LinkedIn or something if you have a network there so that people know, because I think that when people are hiring or just in industries in general, people know each other and they'll reach out to each other if they think, oh, you're not a good fit for this job, but you are for this job. So I'm going to tell this other person about you, stuff like that. But I think that I wouldn't have had my job if I hadn't networked before. And yeah.
I've actually enjoyed hiring candidates off of Upwork. And these, you can find there's definitely a scam industry inside that platform, but there are a lot of qualified individuals who are looking for gig work, who have significant experience, but through whatever factors of their life are not looking for maybe a 40-hour-a-week job. I would recommend looking, to market your services on that platform. Having watched others use it as well, in addition to using it personally myself, to get talent, people bring really interesting data challenges there because they don't really know who to reach out to. And so they start sort of casting the net wide, and Upwork seems to be a natural platform of, I need somebody to help me with X. And, being competitive on there, showing a portfolio. My wife has been looking for somebody to help her organization with a Tableau dashboard. And so looking at other people's Tableau dashboards with the census data that they've worked with, has been really useful, and she has seen just a remarkable number of qualified candidates who are available for gig work, and look for that, because that can also build experience, but also build your story. You know, oh, I worked on this particular census project for this client in Upwork for 40 hours. And I know you're looking probably for something a little more stable and full-time, but along the road to getting there, or maybe to help you get there, look at platforms like that to do gig work for data.
I might have a quick follow-up with some of y'all. I believe Christian and Angie, you talked about doing personal projects to build your skills. Did you market that on your resume? I'm just like thinking through, like, as they're navigating this career, were you also posting those personal projects on your resume?
Yeah, of course. I would say too, like in an interview, it went a long way, as opposed to like, here's the projects I worked on in school. I could like whip out like a website or like a GitHub and be like, look at this cool thing I put together. Like that went a long way.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't think I put it on my resume just because like I think I've done a lot of projects as I've had a job, but I've definitely shared them on LinkedIn and like put them on a website, and I've been able to share, and people definitely click on that. And I think it's a good kind of hook when you're networking to say like, oh, I'm interested in this, working on these fun projects. Or like when you're in an interview and you have projects that you're working on, you can say like, oh, I'm interested in this. And by the way, I've done like all these fun projects.
Cool. Thank you for that. Awesome. Nathan said thank you. So just gonna wrap it up here. So I just want to again thank all 5 of our panelists for really sharing your experience, helping, you know, navigate, give useful advice about your careers. I think there was a lot of great information to pull from. Just a plug for students that are still out there. One thing I heard constantly was networking, right? Networking through experiences of internships, research, LinkedIn. Really, you never know who has the power to possibly move you forward. And so meeting people in this industry, putting yourself out there, right? And out there, I would say taking trainings or courses to build your skill sets, meeting people, that communication skills is all going to sort of build, I call it the whole self, the pie of who you are as you are getting ready to enter the workforce. So thank you. Little silent round of applause to all of our panelists for being here. Robin, do you want to add anything as we are leaving?
No, just, I mean, huge thank you. And there's like, I mean, as a stat teacher with my stat class, hearing all of those things from everybody saying, yes, data is data. Like, I want a sticker of data is data. That's just, yeah.
Hashtag data is
All
data.
of those things has been just absolutely fantastic. Like, see, I'm not making this up. These guys say it too. You know, so love it. Thank you guys so much for your time. And it has been absolutely wonderful. So appreciate this.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all so much, and have a good rest of your days.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Take
Kaylee, you have
care.
it all recorded and everything. Can you save the chat as well and send that to me? So I can put some of their LinkedIn and the URL, the resources on our project website.
Yes. Okay. I might need help navigating. Oh, save chat. I don't want to save chat. I click save chat, but where does it go?
No, when you stop recording and you download the files from the recording, it'll download everything.
Okay.
Oh, actually, yeah, because you're giving me the link.
Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna stop recording right now. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure, because last time I did it differently and I don't want to lose anything.